Hey, my beautiful friends. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Real Talk, where I get to have a real life, raw conversations with incredible people from my circles and communities who've overcome challenges and created amazing. Today, my guest is really pure joy. Ahmed Hasham, known by his stage name DJ Ahmed, has been DJing since 2004, mixing mixing Arabic, Spanish, American pop, Persian, Afghan, and Indian music. DJ Ahmed was born in Iraq and immigrated to San Francisco as a refugee at the age of 9 after surviving the first Gulf War. In a world filled with oppression and division, music is a unifying force that transcends borders, cultures, languages, and faith to center our shared humanity. I'm really excited to have DJ Ahmed with us today. Help me welcome DJ Ahmed to the
Thank
show.
thank you so much, Grace. I'm so honored. I've been a huge fan of your show and your podcast for so long, and to see the platform that you've created to uplift small businesses and entrepreneurs, and really center people's joy and humanity. This is only fitting, and I'm so honored to be here.
Oh, Habibi, thank you so much. No, it's an honor to have you because, like I said, whenever I see you, I just feel so happy and so alive, and I feel this joy. And you bring that every time, every space that I've been in with you, and that's really what it's about at the end of the day. Like, how do we
Mhm.
cultivate the joy through the chaos, and how do we use that joy as a way to rise in resistance?
Right, absolutely,
I love
absolutely.
how you talked about that, so I'm excited to have you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. I know that, you came here as a refugee at the age of 9.
I
You know,
did, yes.
what was that like? I can imagine how scary that must have been.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was born in Iraq, as you mentioned, in the city of Nasiriyah, in the south of Iraq. And we have experienced a lot of aggression, whether it was through like Saddam's, brutal dictatorship regime, or the US bombing our cities to smithereens, whether it's through the first Gulf War or the sanctions or what have you. And so, we were escaping a war zone, and we were moved actually as refugees to the Tenderloin, which I think is another war zone. So that was my intro to America, and the land that you see on TV or on in the movies, the Hollywood productions. That was not it. You
Yeah,
walk.
Tenderloin is very far from
No, not 1000%. And you see, the suffering of people, and you think like this is one of the richest, or if not the richest, the biggest economy in the world and the
Yes.
most powerful country in the world. How is it that we have people that are unhoused, that are sleeping on the streets, that are, you know, um, left to, do unspeakable acts to basically live, and, be oppressed by others as well. Like, how did we get here? And also, knowing that San Francisco houses now like the biggest number of billionaires, I believe, in the country as well. Yet you have this, enclave of San Francisco that is um, just completely destroyed, and people who are just consumed by their pain, and left forgotten by the system.
Consumed
Yeah.
by the pain and forgotten by the system. That's sad. That's sad. And
Hmm.
like I said earlier, anytime I'm in your presence, I feel this joy. And then have, so much pain and chaos in the world as you witnessed as a 9-year-old coming to the United States of America and being in the Tenderloin and seeing pain and suffering co
Hmm.
all across the world. I mean, what do you think that's about?
Hmm.
I mean, you come
Yeah.
from war-torn Iraq to the
Yeah.
Tenderloin in San Francisco, the richest the 5 biggest economies in the world, and there's
Mm.
also you see the pain and suffering.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, I think one of my biggest realizations at the age of 5, when I experienced the first Gulf War, was that I definitely want to be someone who brings joy to the world or also brings peace to other people.
Mhm.
As a 5-year old, I mean, I could have easily been one of the, children that we see on our phone screens right now in Gaza or in Palestine in general, who is orphaned or had died or had lost limbs. I could have easily been one of those children. I mean, literally, the American bombs were falling all around our house. And so I think about that so much, and I think about I'm a very religious and spiritual person as well, and I believe in the intentions that God has created for us and the life that God has planned for us. And so what does that look like? What does that mean? I survived that oppression. I survived the bombs, I survived the sanctions that happened afterwards. There was also forced starvation on the people of Iraq as well, in the 90s. As quote unquote the US says basically it was a reason to punish Saddam, but Saddam was fine. He's living his
Innocent
path.
people are the
Yeah,
casualties of
absolutely.
the power and greed of governments.
Yes, absolutely. And I've always thought that the war is, these conflicts are between big, powerful governments, but the people
Exactly.
who pay the price are the
Yeah.
innocent individuals and the
Yes.
civilians.
Yes.
And so I wanted to, get into spaces and do work that will either alleviate that or bring unity more than disconnect.
Yeah.
And so, my first job at the age of 16 was working with nonprofit organizations in the San Francisco Bay Area that were focused on providing resources for refugees in their resettlement process, as well as whether it was translation or whether it was housing or whether it was medical care, what have you. I wanted to basically be a part of that. Um, and then eventually I realized that you can't live in San Francisco on a nonprofit salary.
That's still
That's
true today.
it's still true today, unfortunately. Even though, the people who are social workers and, educators, those are literally the fabric of our
Yes.
society.
Absolutely.
But they're underpaid and they're underserved as well. And so they can't even afford to live in the places that they work or serve.
Yeah.
And so, I wanted to basically get into like tech and work on social justice work there. We know about the discrimination that happens when you are, of a marginalized community. People look at your resume and they look at your name and they're like, oh, this person is not a culture fit. What does that really mean? That's discrimination, that's racism within itself. This is before there are assumptions that are being placed on this person and forced on this person without before even having a conversation with this person. And so go ahead. Sorry.
And I think I've done staffing for, 30 years, and I've seen it in
Mhm.
different ways.
Right, right.
So
Yeah,
it definitely exists.
yeah, absolutely. And that was another
I've
reason
never
was
let it stop me, I'll tell you that much, 'cause I've
yeah,
experienced it as a woman,
absolutely.
and,
Absolutely.
I go to the next door. I go to the
Yes.
next door and to the next door.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And I was actually told at one point, I was also in recruiting and staffing as well.
Right,
So that's why, our worlds kind of were in parallel. Um I was one of those people who would show up to because thankfully I was like, when you're an internal recruiter, you have a little bit more of a pull because and a little bit more, influence because you are in those meetings with those hiring teams from the beginning. And so, building that trust, building that relationship, really centering like their identities also in the work because we are told to keep ourselves outside the door, right? Like when you walk into that office, when you walk into this company, you know, the whole like bring your full self to work is a facade. It's not real. They say that because it sounds cute and it's really fun to say.
You're not wrong. You're not
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and that's what we're working very hard on
yeah.
in the coaching work that we do is
Mhm,
to, really create spaces and work with leaders so individuals can bring their whole selves to the table because then that makes them much more um they feel safe, which makes them more creative, which means that
mhm.
they'll be more productive.
Absolutely. It's better for business.
Yes.
That's the thing I had to remind people constantly, that having the diversity of thought, even the diversity of experience, the diversity of, culture, if you want your platform or your product or your tool to be used by the masses, you have to make it accessible to the masses. You cannot center just one specific community because you feel like and a lot of this is like not even based in real data and not even based in real science. It's these assumptions that if you went to a specific academic institution, then you must be the best of the best.
Right.
And if you grew up in a specific environment or if you had this level of access, then you must be really, really good. And we have seen over and over again that a lot of the people who make it into these huge, academic institutions or like brand name academic institutions, they come from privilege, they come from access, they come from nepotism.
Yeah.
The nepo babies are real. We talk about
And
that.
and all of this it is real. I've seen it. I've experienced it in a lot of ways. It is who you know.
Yeah. Yes.
And
Yeah.
I've also seen situations where despite people's circumstances like yourself, like myself,
Mhm.
like so many other people we know, despite the circumstances, we rise above the stereotypes.
Mhm.
So let's talk about that. Like, what
Yeah.
do you think that's about?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is.
Friends, it's Grace Redman. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you here at Real Talk. If you've been inspired by what you're hearing and you're ready to take things to the next level, I would be honored to work with you. If you're a leader or entrepreneur ready to soar, I offer one on one coaching to help you create a business and life of freedom that you are excited to wake up to. And if you're craving something more intimate, I offer a personal VIP day that includes deep dive coaching, a nature walk, and an early dinner. I promise you will leave just feeling rejuvenated. If this speaks to you, please reach out and let's do this together. You can find me at www.graceredmond.com. Now, back to the program. So let's talk about that. Like, what
Yeah.
do you think that's about?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is but the biggest part for me about rising above the stereotypes is really understanding the origin of the stereotypes.
Mm,
Who created these? Who
yes.
benefits from that? Who benefits from our oppression? And even the people that we talked about, the unhoused community in the Tenderloin, or the people who, have severe addiction challenges, you know, there is definitely somebody and some entity or some business that is benefiting off of that. And so
Yeah.
really you can't solve that problem without actually getting to the root of it and understanding that. And so a
Yes.
lot of what I've done in the last 2 years, especially after we saw the aggression escalate on Gaza and Palestine, I mean, we can't even say the genocide started 2 years ago. It started 1948. It started before that, right? The Palestinian community has been, you know, uh, have had the Nakba, have had their displacement, their catastrophes over and over and over. And obviously, as Iraqis, like we completely relate to that experience, with our country going through constant wars, being like a battlefield for the United States to fight people or other countries in the region, right? And so I needed to really fully dive into understanding um, why is it that, I have to be extra nice when I show up at TSA? Like, why, a lot of there was I had some friends who are like non-Arab, who whenever I travel with them, they would always say like, "You're talking way too much to the to the agents." Like when we come back into the country and when I'm talking to, the immigration officers, I'm sharing way more than what they're asking. And I'm asking about their day and all of that. And like there was this consistent need to be, the palatable or like the nice Arab man, who has this very Arab face and this very Arab beard, and this very Arab name. And so, understanding that I don't need to consistently prove my humanity. I don't
No.
need to consistently prove that I'm quote unquote the exception because I'm not the exception. I am actually the norm in our community. We're
Yes.
raised with lots of love for our culture, for our community, for our people. We are taught, as a Muslim, also the Quran like basically teaches us that we have to take care, and our Prophet Muhammad teaches us that we have to take care of our seventh neighbor, like basically seven neighbors down, right? And in Christianity, there's that same concept as well of, love thy neighbor.
Yes.
And so when you're a community like that, you're much more solid, and you're much more, you take care of each other, and you're much stronger. But how can your oppressors and occupiers, like, win it by dividing you? And
That's
so,
exactly what I say
mhm,
all of the time. I mean, this is by design to divide
right,
and conquer, not just,
right,
Palestinians and Israelis, not just Iraqis and,
yeah, yeah,
across the board because if us as humans, at this level are constantly in conflict with each other, the
mhm,
establishment wins
right,
because
right,
we're busy fighting each other. We don't realize what's
mhm,
going on at the top.
absolutely, absolutely, and
So
decolonizing. Yeah.
how do we you said decolonizing.
Mhm.
Go for it.
Yeah, I was gonna say we have to first decolonize our minds, right?
Yes.
Before we decolonize our lands, right? How do we actually look at each other with humanity? I mean, even like for myself as a Muslim, I was literally raised to be Jewish first because we believe in the teachings of Moses. We believe in the Abrahamic religions, right? We believe we're Christians second because we believe in Jesus Christ, and we believe in all the miracles that he performed, and the status that God has given him, to sow like peace and kindness and love in the
Yes.
world. And we also are Muslims as well because believe in the teachings of Prophet Muhammad and everything that he stood for as well. So there is this unifying
Mhm.
piece right there. There isn't like this one community against the other, right?
Yes.
And even when you think about the non-Abrahamic religions, whether it's Hinduism or Buddhism, the more I started learning about Buddhism, the more I realized, oh my God, they're just like us. So many of their
Totally.
practices, one of the things that was like mind blowing for me is like we were, just raised and socialized to believe that, you know, Buddha is God, but like in reality is that Buddhists worship God, the same God that we all worship, all Abrahamic faiths worship, but Buddhas are individuals who have reached a level of enlightenment, and that they are actually attainable. Those levels are attainable for those of us like you and like myself. So it gives us something to strive towards, similarly to like the prophets that we all, have followed for so long and have learned from. And so I think that was so incredibly liberating, like understanding what are the similarities, what are some of these things, and just going in without just reading some op-ed on like the New York Times that is l- littered and riddled with division and ulterior motives, right?
Exactly, because division creates more division, hate creates more hate. It's really when what you just talked about, how do we come together to see, y the humanity in this?
Yeah.
Like, we have to do things a different way, we have to come from a place of peace.
Mhm.
However, sometimes I feel like when we come from a place of peace, it's like, people get so angry, but how are we gonna do
Mhm.
things differently? How can
Yes.
we do things like, we need to do something different.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And realizing also, like, deconstructing what anger actually is, right? I think that was one of my biggest things as, again, like a Arab, very Arab, visually Arab Muslim man, my entire name as well, is that, you know, there is that the stereotype of anger, like this is the angry Arab man, right? And so I was like, oh, I don't want to be the angry Arab man. Whenever I'm angry about something, I'm just like, oh, here I go again. I'm the
And
angry
anger
Arab
serves a
man.
purpose too, like, we cannot like, that's part of our human emotion. We have to
1000%.
like, it has to be honored or else we will fricking die.
1000%. And really owning that and really like making peace and humanizing ourselves, right? Because that's a part of the dehumanization that serves our oppressors, right? Is like if you prevent yourself from being your full self, then you are now easier to manipulate, easier to control, easier to like basically brush aside. My oppressor can say whatever the heck they want about me, but I'm too afraid to show emotion to respond to what they're saying about me. And I think once I completely let go of that facade and that fallacy, you start to realize like, no, you have to honor your anger. Our anger is sacred.
I agree.
Our anger is sacred just as much as our joy is, you
Absolutely.
know? And one of, to kind of bring it to like, the joy piece of it as well is that, after the Tenderloin, my family and I actually moved to the Mission. And the Mission is very, very rich in culture,
Yes.
all the Spanish speak
Food and amazing food.
the arts, exactly, the music, like all of it. It was so incredible. And as an Arab, like the Spanish speaking communities were very, very, very similar to like our culture.
Very
Very family oriented. They love life. They look out for each other. They're incredibly gracious, incredible hosts. Everyone's welcome. There's so much generosity, and I felt like I was homesick so much for Iraq, and especially during that time where I was so close to my grandparents and my great-grandparents and my aunts and uncles in Iraq that I and then we couldn't go back because we were refugees, and, I really was, like, feeling this level of, like, disconnect and this identity crisis, and I found myself in, like, this rich community that really embraced me. And so, I was in a folklorico dance team. I was in a salsa dance team. I
Yeah, we
was
gotta go salsa.
yes. I was literally I say this with so much pride that I was like Mexican for like 10 years of my life.
Oh, honey, I was Mexican for a good amount of my life too. Mexican, Salvadorian, Ecuadorian, all of the above.
Right, exactly. And it's because of those similarities, and it's because you see like the way they celebrate each other and the way they celebrate themselves and the way. And I was like, "Whoa, this is completely us," and it felt like home. It literally felt like home away from home, and I'm sure you felt that way as
I
well.
did. I did, still very close to our Latin friends. They're embedded into our community, as you
Mhm.
know,
Right.
and that's how it started is,
Yeah.
as young kids, we gravitated towards each other because there
Right.
was a similarity, and it was
Mhm.
family culture was similar, and, we felt safe with them as well.
Mhm. Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
I feel what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely, and so San Francisco at the time, at least, this is like 90s, early 2000s, it was a place where a lot of immigrant communities were able to live, and it was such a huge, like, immigrant hub, and so a lot of, the students that were at my high school, I went to LA High School in San Francisco, shout out G House.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, exactly. And so everyone there was of an immigrant family, of an immigrant community. And when I got there, like I was able to experience the Filipino culture, the Indian culture, the Afghan, the Persian, the Polynesian culture, and everybody was so incredibly excited and eager to educate about their culture and about themselves. And I just felt like, oh, would they be receptive to like our culture? And they were, and they wanted to learn our language and they wanted to, learn so much of like, Depke, for example, or like, our music and our songs. And then September 11th actually happened, while I was in high school. And one of the ways we wanted to combat like all of the anti-Arab, anti-Muslim like sentiment that was happening in the country and in the media was for us to now be louder. I started wearing my kufiya, my hatta literally at that time, and I would wear it everywhere I go because I wanted to be visible, and I wanted people to have these encounters with me where they can actually either ask me about my culture, about my religion. Also, there are so many women who wear hijab in San Francisco as well. They wear the scarf. And so, they're walking targets at that time where there's so much hate and there's so much, misconception, so many misconceptions
Mhm.
pointed at our community. So I wanted to be as visible as they were. And I also wanted to signal safety for the people who are of our communities, who are walking around, not sure if they're going to be attacked, not sure if they're going to be harassed, what have you. They can see that, here's somebody who's wearing this, traditional piece of fabric that has so much symbolism and that actually, symbolizes safety and security for with the community. So I wore my hatta, my kufiyya for so long after that, and then started organizing um, basically student-led assemblies in the different high schools. We were at Washington High School, Lincoln, Mission, all of the high schools in the area, and we took this kind of like roadshow assembly where there was Egyptian music and there was a dabke and there was like spoken word and there was poetry and there was a fashion show and there was like food introductions and things like that where we really wanted like the students to fully understand and fully experience the Arab culture for all of its richness outside of what was basically being
Mhm.
said about it in the news.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that also brings me to conditioning, society condition,
Yes.
the
Yes.
propaganda, and not just, on Arabs, but, other communities,
Yes. Yes.
and how, again, we're conditioned by
Yes.
the media, by, maybe, well, mainly the media,
Yes. Right.
and
Yes.
it's
Intentionally.
for, yeah, it's intentional for a certain reason. So I love how you've, brought the different communities together
Mm,
to highlight, at that time during the, to 9/11, to
right.
highlight, okay, look, you're safe. This is us. It doesn't
Yeah.
The picture that they're painting is not a true picture.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that really catapulted me into, these areas of like joy and how do we actually, combat fear, the fear mongering and the fear that was
Right.
intentionally created and put out there about our community with pure joy. Let's actually party together, let's celebrate together, let's listen to good music, let's actually share our greatest fears. What are your concerns when you're walking down the street? And where you realize that or just not even just down the street, what are your concerns in life in general? What are some of the things and you realize that you share so much, whether, it's the dreams, the hopes and dreams that you have for yourself and for your family, for your loved ones, for your community, and also your fear of uh, how may those dreams not come to fruition, right? Or what would actually get in the way of those that joy to like cultivate in your community and in yourself, and really like getting to the root of it and using logic because
Yes.
emotion is really the biggest weapon that they've used against us.
And I like what you said earlier too, is decolonizing our minds.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because if we've been conditioned to believe, to live in fear, or we've been conditioned to believe that we're less than,
Yeah.
then I believe that we're gonna walk that way. I had someone reach out to me and say, "Do you think," who was American born,
Mhm.
but, "Do you feel because we're, Palestinian, that I haven't been able to do this?" I said, "You know what? Take that
Mhm.
out of your mind right now, because of
Mm.
that, his mind is colonized."
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And when you're in that victim mentality, not to say that that's not real, like that is real. We do have to work so much harder than other people, to get maybe a fraction of what, we are working towards or what we deserve. But, seeing Empire, for example, like Ghazi and like all
Oh,
the
yeah.
things that they're doing in the music world, to have one of us do this work
Yeah.
is so incredible. We finally have this level of representation, you know?
And that's what I
When
mean. That's what I mean, because
Yeah.
Ghazi had the same conditioning we did. You
Mhm.
have the same condition, and believe me, I know it is,
Mhm.
it's out
Yeah.
there, he chose to break those barriers. You chose to break
Absolutely.
those, those barriers, and you're right, we're gonna have to knock on many more doors, many, many
Mhm.
more doors, but there's gonna be a door that opens for us.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely, and
seriously, when
we
we start, like you said, let's get out there, getting, mobilizing, getting into
Mhm.
the communities, educating people. Because like you said,
Absolutely,
there's fear. Like, how do we
absolutely.
dispel that fear?
Yeah,
By, like, what
absolutely.
you do. It's by you
Yeah.
going out there being DJ Ahmed. We walk in the room, it brings joy, and that begins to dispel the fear.
Mhm,
That's a good
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, there are so many times that's beautifully said. Like, you have to knock on all of those doors, and one of those doors will open. And I think one of to add to that is we sometimes are so in our minds about what we could potentially lose. Okay. But if
yeah,
you're already starting at zero and you haven't even started, what are you actually losing?
that's true. That's true.
Right?
True. And listen, I feel for my colleagues and friends who are in corporate positions who,
Yeah.
are I get it. That is real. I'm not just, you know, discounting.
Yeah.
It is real. And to them, I'm like, hey, you do what you feel is best because there's different ways that they are contributing to the cause. It's not they didn't
Absolutely.
have to come out
Yeah.
and scream, but they are doing it in those rooms, at those
Yeah.
tables, in the way that,
Absolutely.
works for them. So each person I feel is contributing to the cause in a way that works for them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's so much learning that we are doing from people who have literally done this before. I think so much of the work that or so many of the things that we're currently experiencing, and we've been experiencing for a long time, but now it's like it's the focus is on Arabs and on Palestinians specifically. Um, there are other oppressed and marginalized communities that have faced these similar challenges. We talk about our Black siblings who have literally been going through this for 400 years, multiple generations of oppression, right? And when I read the work of like Malcolm X, for example, or I read the work of Octavia Butler, or Isabel Wilkerson, there's so much depth and there's so much that we can actually use, to that they have done the work to actually like literally hand it to us on a silver platter and say, hey, here's the blueprint, here's the propaganda machines, and here are the tools of our oppressors, and this is what we can do to actually dismantle them, right? Yes, you may need people who are on the inside, but you also need the agitators. I am so proud to be an agitator. I know that I am. I can be in those spaces, whether it is corporate settings, or meeting with executives or what have you, and really like calling things out for what they are instead of shying away and being kind of like passive, because that's when we are passive in those spaces. Yes, we may keep our jobs, and that's important, and we have families to support, and we
Yes.
have mortgages to pay, and we have people who rely on our income. However, we are doing our entire community a disservice, and so I we also need to get out of that limited mindset too, and go into an abundance mindset, and that's also centered in faith, right?
Oh,
We
now you're talking my language.
Yeah.
And like again, we go back to recolonizing, the mindset and abundance mindset and going
Right,
from a
right.
mindset of fear to faith because you
Yeah.
said it at the beginning, of the show. You're
Mhm.
Jewish and Christian
Mm.
and
Mhm.
Muslim. And
1000%.
there's I believe, and if I'm gonna be, bashed for this, so
Mm.
be you know, I believe there is one God and each
Yes.
person have the God of their understanding, right?
1000%. Yes.
And
Yes.
we're all a child of God.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes. There's a really beautiful book by, I forget his first name. His last name is Ansari. It's called The Invention of Yesterday.
Okay.
Um,
I know who
and
you're
so Yeah, so, this book also was revolutionary for me because it talks about, the history of the world, understanding how did the world come to be, at least to the best of our knowledge and to whatever data we currently have. So, Mr. Ansari was actually someone who was a textbook editor. He's a editor of history textbooks, and so he basically created his own book, and he put it basically for those of us who are now no longer in school, I guess. you know, um, and so one of the things that he touches on literally is that point is that we may be even the same family, right? Let's say my mom and my siblings and my father, we're all Muslimin, we're all Muslims in our household. However, we are technically a religion of one because our understanding of our religion may vary in different things. We may share a lot of very similar values and similar ethics or similar understandings. However, there may be one or two things that we either differ on, or maybe so many things that we differ on. Yet we still worship like the same God, and so that makes us technically a religion of one. So once you start to like really think of the world as like what almost 8 billion people,
Yeah,
and everyone's a religion of one. Like, what are we fighting each other for? What is this insanity for? Like, my God is better than yours. It's the same
mic
God.
mic drop. So right there, what are we
Yeah.
fighting for? And
Yeah.
we're all a religion of one. We all have,
Yeah.
the need to be seen, affirmed, to live, allow our families to live. I think what's happening is horrific for humanity. And I
Mhm.
feel for, the people of Gaza, the Palestinian people. I feel for the Jewish people. I feel for every single person that's alive right
Right.
now that needs to witness this. And I also know that we've witnessed this type of horrific behavior throughout, civilization. I believe it's because to get people to see the humanity, like, you cannot
Mhm.
witness what's happening and not step into your humanity,
Mhm. 1000%.
and it
1000%.
has to start with you. Like, it
1000.
starts here. You want a better world? Start here.
Absolutely, absolutely. The literature is out there, Edward Said's Orientalism. Let me tell you, I read this in college, and then I think a year and a half ago, I decided to read it again. It was revolutionary. It is revolutionary because it really tells you how the current state that we're in has taken 2 centuries, literally 200 years to actually get us to this point. And once you really realize that, you start to realize that, hey, then if our colonizers and our oppressors had this long of a vision. They weren't doing it. They're not looking for like instant gratification. They're not trying to just have something happen for them in their lifetime. They're planning for generations ahead. And so for us to be responsible stewards of this world and responsible ancestors to the next generations, we have to start planning now, and we have to start acting now. And we may lose, some of our jobs. We may lose some of our income streams. Yes, those are all valid. But what are we actually gaining? We're gaining the long term liberation of humanity.
Of human
Um,
Exactly.
yes, and it literally takes a collective. You cannot do it alone.
No.
You cannot do it alone. We all and that's why the divide and conquer strategy was so, so, so strong and so, like,
It still
powerful and so
is.
effective. Exactly.
It still is, and that's why I like these love these not just like I love these conversations. Like,
Yeah.
see through that,
Yes.
strategy.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And once you stick to your values and your morals and your ethics and you know exactly what you're doing, the money will come.
Oh,
The money
absolutely.
will come, the status will come, the
I
people will
believe that.
see you.
Well, actually, I wanna talk about that because you talked
Yeah,
about, releasing the need for validation and
yeah.
status. So let's talk
Mhm.
about that a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for so long, so I've been DJing for 20 years. Okay,
You
confessions
look
time.
like you're 20. I know, I've been out there with you for those 20 years.
No, alhamdulillah, I'm so grateful. I'm grateful to be 40, and I'm grateful, I think once you experience the oppression that our community experiences, you realize that like so many of our siblings don't make it to these milestone ages, and so I celebrate all of it. I keep all my grays. I'm proud of my grays. I lost my hair. I'm proud of that as well. You saw me at the event the
Really?
other
You look
day.
amazing.
Just thank you so much. And so there is also this like uh just into like really being comfortable in my own skin outside of what our what what the fears are, right? What are people gonna think if they see these fine lines that are under my age? Anyway, my eyes. Sorry, we
Thank
totally digress. We're supposed to be talking about music
no, hey,
and
listen,
DJing.
I'm a little bit vain, I get the Botox for the fine line, whatever. I just gotta put that out there.
Listen, and if that makes you feel a certain way and feels like, about yourself, then that's, like, honestly more power to you. I feel like, it doesn't necessarily need to be something that is enforced on anybody, whether to get it or whether not to get it, right? Like, I don't wanna shame anybody for whatever they choose to do to their
Totally.
bodies and their selves, and I also don't wanna be shamed, And, speaking of that, my mom actually was like, "Hey, Ahmed, do you wanna go to Turkey?" And I said, "I know where
What?
you're going with that."
Oh
To
gosh,
get
no.
to get the
Got it,
hair
got it.
transplant. I said, "Mama, I'm gonna lean right into this, okay? This bald head, and I'm gonna embrace it."
Wonderful.
But, I started DJing 20 years ago, and for so long I was like, I don't want to be just a DJ. I have to have a real career. I have to have a real job, right? Like I need to go. And so that I went into tech for like 12 years and did and so much of that, like even socially, right? You get the validation of, oh, you work for this big tech company. Oh, wow, that's so cool. And what do you do? And and so there's like this status that comes along with it, but what people who are not in those spaces don't see is that those places are also oppressive, right? There's so much indignity that we have to face. There's so much pain that we have to face. And it comes at a price, right? They're not looking at Ahmed because Ahmed has all this knowledge and this passion and he's coming in to do this. No, Ahmed's job is to press this button over and over and over again to get them the results that they need and make them money, right? And so once we strip ourselves away from that, I have so many of my friends who are in medicine, incredibly noble, work. However, they absolutely hate it and they wanted to become doctors and, nurses because they wanted to help humanity. But they get in and they realize that there are so much red tape. There's so much, there's so much control by not only administrations and hospitals themselves, but also the insurance companies that
Yeah,
really pressure and like put so much on the doctors that they're afraid of being sued and they're afraid of malpractice and they're afraid of this. They can't really like, yes, we need those safeguards, but we also need people who are passionate, who are kind, who are not zombies. Bedside matter is important. It's just as important as the actual treatment
absolutely,
itself, right?
absolutely.
And so to be heard, to be seen, but people can't do that. They feel so limited, and they can't practice the way they have. So, I started to realize that all of these people that we revere and we love so much and we give them so much respect because they've reached this status and they worked so hard and they got this job title and they work for this company, they're miserable. People are self-medicating in so many different ways,
Yeah,
and I was like, okay, do I want to be that person? Do I? And also, like, I'm not living up to my values. I'm not living up to those things. We have to reimagine what these statuses actually, mean. And Isabel Wilkerson, in her book Cast: The Origins of Our Discontent, talks about the hierarchy, talks about the status and what that actually means, talks about who does it actually serve? We're always taught, okay, be quiet until you become a director or a VP or like an executive, and then you can make the change. Well, first of all, not all of us are afforded those opportunities because there are blockers along the way. No matter how hard you work, no matter how educated you are, no matter what access you have, no matter what knowledge, what passion you have. So it's not, it's not just.
I'm gonna challenge you on that as
Yeah,
well. And again, if I'm conditioned to believe
yeah.
that that's not, meant, I block myself too,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
you
Yes,
know?
and so that's where I feel like finding your tribe and finding people
Yes,
who are mission aligned and values aligned, that's really the game changer,
it
you
is.
know? And
Absolutely.
so that's why I feel like, people like yourself who I have no doubt in my mind that Grace and I have the same like values and perspective on life, and Grace is known to be a wonderful person who cares about humanity and wants to uplift others. So therefore, if those are my values, I'm going to seek out grace, right? And similarly, like that, and we have to be visible in that way,
Yeah.
right? You can't necessarily go into an organization that is known to be oppressive and think you're gonna change the world there, right? Um, but it is really inspirational to see the people that actually make it. So many of us have
Yeah,
to at least try.
absolutely. And that's where, I'm saying, like,
Yeah.
absolutely, because you never know. I believe that all of our systems right now are falling apart for a reason. They have
Mhm.
to fall apart because they're no longer working. You talked about the medical, you talked about,
Mhm.
corporations, you talked about,
Mhm. Exactly.
school. So
Yeah.
I absolutely believe that all of our systems are falling apart. So we
Mhm.
can create them in a way that's evolved, in a way that
Absolutely.
supports humanity, in a way that is, inclusive. And
Mhm.
again, a lot of it has to do it's when you have a leader, it starts with the leader. What's the leader's mindset? Because as you know, I've also
Mhm.
been doing staffing and consulting for
Mhm.
30 years. I've seen exactly what you've talked about, where they've told
Mhm.
me, like, this is the culture. And then I could read between the lines. And I've also worked with organizations that were amazing and inclusive,
Mhm.
and they embrace,
Mhm.
you know, uh, uh, people that I would think they would never embrace. So
Mhm.
there's both schools, and
Right.
now it's time for all of those systems so we can create more of that collective school, that school
Mhm.
where it's inclusive. And some cultures
Absolutely.
aren't for everyone as well too.
Absolutely.
That's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's plenty. That's where you have like the abundance mindset, right? Is when there's so much out there for all of us, and building for ourselves, building for our communities. That's going to be really, really huge, especially when we're in a time when we're realizing that so many of the companies that we support, so much of the products that we buy actually go, their money directly goes to our oppressors and to
See,
continue to
I
oppress
mean, we
us.
we live in the United States. I mean, our
Right.
you know,
And tax dollars.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's that's just the reality.
Yeah, absolutely. But
And
we also
but
don't.
what can we do as,
Yeah,
as the average person, meaning, like,
yeah,
we're not in a political place, we're not the
yeah,
1%, we're not the elite, like, what can
yes,
we do
yes. I,
knowing that dollars are going? I mean, I know I don't go to
yeah,
Starbucks.
yes. That's a part of it, Grace. Like that's a big part of that, right? When you divest, right? When you boycott and divest your money, your investments, your spending. I mean, we live in a capitalist world, right? Or a country at least, right? And so, so much of that is they may not necessarily listen to your vote when you actually vote in the elections. The elections happen every 2 years. We have some the local elections and then the federal elections, right? Like every 2 years or so, there's some big election that you have to vote in, which is incredibly vital, incredibly important. Definitely encourage everybody to really be involved, especially on a local level, because
Yeah.
that's where a lot of the impact actually is. Um, and with that, also vote with your dollar, vote with your money. You know, there's a reason why Starbucks closed so many of their branches or their locations, right? But guess what that did? Now there's an entire new industry of coffee shops that are Yemeni owned, that are Arab owned, that are popping up all over the country. There are literally like at least 7 or 8 in San Francisco, right? And so if you think about what that means is like people are powerful. As a collective, we are very powerful. When we take our money and we say, you know what? You're not mission aligned. You're using your money for all these terrible things. Spotify, for example, Spotify's CEO just invested, I think, like 600 million in a, weapons manufacturing company. Okay, though everyone's like, you know what, we're gonna need to get away from
Oh,
Spotify
damn, I
now.
haven't
There's
looked into that.
Yeah, right. And
No.
there's the new app that I just found out about. It is called Aria,
Mhm.
Aria, and not sponsored by them. I don't know them, but it is basically this collective of engineers that have built. They're called Tech for Palestine. It's this collective here that started in the Bay Area, but now has gained like global reach. They're building these platforms. There's also another social media platform that's coming up also that is also built by people who are also have similar values. So it's also not beneficial for us to throw our hands up and be like, okay, well, we live here, we gotta participate. So here we love our lifestyles, we love our frappuccinos, even though they're full of sugar and terrible coffee, but terrible quality coffee. But like I think this is an incredible opportunity for all of us to start really building for ourselves, and again taking that really like long-term perspective and view, and not necessarily thinking about, okay, like these next 6 months or this next year. Yes,
Yeah,
that's important as well, but what's going to happen in 10 years? How
right.
big is your company going to be? How big is your coffee company going to be in 10
True.
years?
Kinda like Ghazi, which we get to
Exactly.
celebrate Ghazi this Saturday,
Exactly.
September 13th at Civic
Yes.
Center,
Yes.
so that's gonna
Yes.
be really amazing to
Yeah.
celebrate him. So I
Absolutely.
yeah, it's so and like you're saying, it's not gonna just be 6, toll time. It's a long game.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's a long game again for the entire systems to fall
Yeah.
apart so we can create, and it's at the end of the day, it's about humanity. It's not about
Mhm.
him, her, she, it,
Yeah. Yeah.
labeling because like you said,
Right.
we're all one.
Right, absolutely, absolutely.
We're
Yes,
all one.
and building for each other. What does the world look like for our children? What does that look like for the future
Yeah,
generations? What does it look like when we are, at an age when we are going to rely on other people to take care of us and we don't have the strength that we have now, right? Do we want to leave this world feeling like, okay, well, we just felt defeated and we were victims our whole lives, or do we want to actually do something and contribute to something? And not everybody needs to be a CEO and a founder and like whatever, right?
absolutely not. It's just
But
being kind to regardless if it's a
right,
Muslim neighbor, a Jewish neighbor,
right,
a Buddhist neighbor,
yeah.
whatever it is, because 'cause we're all human beings.
Yes, absolutely.
We're all
And
human
supporting each other, like supporting Empire.
collectively.
Mhm. Absolutely. Supporting the people who, are able and are in places of privilege who can take, maybe chances and take risks that we can't take, right? How do we actually support them? Because they need to be supported. Ghazi's not running Empire all on his own. He's the first to say, I'm running this entire, I'm one of many people who make this happen. And he's constantly
Absolutely.
gracious to all of his team, etc. So, and to basically use that as one example, there's so many other communities that also do similar things in different spaces, like Tatriz, for example. My friend Amani, who you probably know as well, created this Tatriz, which is the Palestinian embroidery for our listeners who don't know. um and it has become this beautiful thriving community of artists who want to a feel connected to their Palestinian heritage, and b also like put their fingers and their hands to work to build something for themselves and for their community as well, in form of gifts, in form of um, just beautiful decorative things, instead of going to buy something that is generic, that is created by a machine, that is created mass produced. You're going to have you're supporting artists who actually do this, that are local, right?
I love that. I love that. I can't believe I'm like, I just looked at the time. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I wanna be respectful of your time because I could be here with you forever," and we took it all around the world. I
Good.
love it, and I wanna kind of go back to the music before we wrap up because
Yeah.
you create experiences that whoever walks in, if it's your, Muslim brother, if
Mhm,
it's your, Jewish brother, if it is your
mhm,
Christian brother, if it is your Buddhist brother, it doesn't matter. I have been
mhm,
in those rooms where you
mhm,
have been at the turntable and you create an atmosphere of not only joy, but peace and
mhm.
unity. And I wanna thank you for that because this, my friend Habibi, that's what it's about, and I thank you for creating that space, and the question I have for you is before the party starts, do
Yeah.
you have a ritual or a routine to put
Mhm,
yourself in that place of oneness and God and love?
mhm, mhm. Yes, thank you for that question. Because I'm usually like even after 20 years, I'm a nervous wreck for like maybe 2 days before any event.
You would never know that because every time I walk in, you are just shining
Yeah.
bright.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I think once I press play that's typically what really gets me there. And also, like, I think knowing and trusting that I've done all the things that I needed to do. I prepare a custom playlist for every client. We have a consultation. I need to know what brings them joy, what do they respond to, also like what music do they not want to hear? Because I think a do not playlist is just as important as a
Okay,
playlist.
okay,
you
alright.
know, I mean, there are artists that we're not values aligned with, right? And there are songs that are triggering for us, So how do avoid those, right? So making sure that I put in that work before, and then during the actual event itself, once sound check is good, I typically like to play some of my, classics like Fadl Shakir or anything, or even like Ashanti, like some old
Yeah,
school like
you got this
R&B.
dog up in there, especially
Yes.
from
Yes, exactly.
Juicy from Biggie.
Yes, exactly, just all the music that we love that brings us joy, and, like, once I'm in that place, I'm no longer thinking about, the pressure of, like, having to deliver and, like, the whole entire party is, like, riding on my shoulders, and I gotta make sure that people are having good, but, like, also feeding off of the crowd.
Yes.
I look around at every person. I remember, when I see you and like singing along to certain songs, or whether they're classics or, new age music, it makes me so happy, and it makes me feel like, okay, I'm doing something, I'm living my purpose. I'm creating this experience for, the people in attendance.
And I love it, and I look forward to continuing to come to your experiences because I really believe, like you said, joy is a form of resistance, so may you continue bring us all that joy.
Amen. Amen. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much,
so much
guys.
for joining me today. I love you, I appreciate you. Thank you for everything that you do. So, for those watching and listening, where can they find you?
I am on Instagram at DJ Ahmed, DJAHMED. I know a lot of people spell Ahmed with an A D, but it's ED. I also have a website that is dj-ahmed.com. Um, I'm also in the process of building a few different things as well. There's also I just joined TikTok, against my will, but, it's at DJ Ahmed Music, and so I'm super excited to, to see you, and see all of your listeners as well, and, excited to connect with them as well.
Oh, thank you, and we'll also include those in the banner, so if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you so much for listening and watching another episode of Real Talk. We wish you all the best, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, love, thank you so much for listening today. I am so grateful for you. I'd like to show you my appreciation by gifting you a free forgiveness self hypnosis audio download. Part of living the fun and fabulous life is practicing forgiveness. Forgiveness can be such a long and challenging process. My intention is that this forgiveness audio will help you in practicing forgiveness, especially with yourself. Grab it by visiting daretoachieve.com/forgiveness. For more inspiring tips, make sure to connect with me on social media. Drop me a line on Facebook or Instagram at Grace Redman Dare to Achieve. Until next time, keep moving forward towards living your fabulous life.